The Zrillion science vessel Eternal Seeker hung motionless in the void, its crystalline hull refracting starlight in mesmerizing patterns. Chief Researcher Ixel stood before the ship's primary observation dome, all four of their eyes fixed on the blue-green planet spinning below. Their delicate frame, evolved for the gentle gravity of their homeworld, trembled slightly despite the ship's gravitational compensators. "Impossible," they whispered, their voice like wind through crystal chimes. "Run the atmospheric analysis again." The ship's AI complied silently, new data streaming across the transparent displays surrounding Ixel. The numbers remained unchanged. Atmospheric pressure 100 and 1.325 kilopascals. Surface gravity 9.8 meters per second squared. Temperature variations from -89.2 to 56.7 degrees Celsius. By any reasonable standard, this world should be classified as uninhabitable. Yet there it was, undeniable evidence of not just life, but advanced civilization. Cities gleamed in the night side of the planet. Transportation networks crisscrossed continents, and primitive orbital structures circled above the atmosphere. Most shocking of all, initial scans suggested the dominant species had evolved naturally on this death trap of a world. First Officer Naira, Ixel called out, their voice carrying the harmonics of urgent concern. "Please verify these readings." Naira glided forward, their bioluminescent patches pulsing with curiosity. Like all Zrillions, they moved with the careful grace of beings adapted to much gentler conditions than this hostile world presented. "The readings are accurate, Chief Researcher. We verified them through 3 different sensor arrays." Ixel's upper eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of deep thought among their kind. These beings, these humans as they call themselves, they live here without environmental suits, without gravity supports. Not only do they survive here, Naira responded, bringing up additional data streams, they thrive. Look at these activity patterns. They voluntarily expose themselves to temperature extremes for something they call sports. They build dwellings in zones of frequent seismic activity. They dive into pressurized water bodies for recreation. The research team gathered around their leaders, each new piece of data causing ripples of astonishment through their collective bioluminescence. One junior researcher's light patterns flickered so intensely with shock that they had to be led away to a relaxation chamber. "Show me their biological data," Ixel commanded, their scientific curiosity overriding their initial disbelief. The displays shifted, showing detailed scans of human physiology. Dense bones that would crush Zrillion's delicate frame. Muscle structures capable of generating forces that would tear their own bodies apart. A respiratory system adapted to process what should be toxic levels of oxygen. Most incredibly, repair mechanisms that could heal damage that would be fatal to most known species. They're not just surviving, Ixel realized, their voice dropping to an almost reverent tone. They evolved for these conditions. This is their normal. A new alert flashed across the displays. A human satellite had detected their presence. Within moments, radio signals began streaming in, carrying messages in multiple languages. The humans weren't just aware of them. They were actively attempting communication. "Chief Researcher," Naira said, their light patterns showing both excitement and apprehension. "How do we proceed?" The standard first contact protocols weren't designed with beings like this in mind. Ixel stood silent for a long moment, watching as more data poured in about this remarkable species. The humans were sending detailed scientific information, mathematical sequences, and cultural data, all broadcast freely into space, inviting contact. "We proceed with utmost respect," Ixel finally declared. "We are not meeting primitive beings who need our guidance. We are meeting survivors, warriors, a species that turned a death world into their cradle." They turned to face their crew, their bioluminescence pulsing with determination. "Prepare for first contact, and upgrade our environmental suits to maximum protection. We're about to meet beings who consider our nightmares their playground." As the crew rushed to comply, Ixal returned their gaze to the planet below. In all their centuries of exploration, they had never encountered anything like this. A species that didn't just endure impossible conditions, but mastered them. A people who built civilizations in places that should prohibit life itself. The humans were still broadcasting, their messages growing more sophisticated as they analyzed the Zrillion vessel's responses. Their eagerness to communicate was clear, their signals carrying an unmistakable tone of excitement rather than fear. Perhaps, Ixal mused, their inner eyes closing in contemplation. This is exactly what our galaxy needs. A species that doesn't know when to quit. A people who look at the impossible and see a challenge. The Eternal Seeker began its careful descent toward Earth, its crew preparing to meet beings who would redefine their understanding of what life could achieve. The age of humanity's introduction to the galactic community was about to begin, and nothing would ever be the same. The United Earth Defense Force headquarters in Geneva hummed with activity as Commander Sarah Chen strode through its reinforced corridors. Behind her, encased in their environmental suits, the Zrillion delegation struggled to keep pace even with the building's gravity reduced to 60% of Earth normal. And this is just how you live. First Officer Naira asked through their translator, the device struggling to convey their mix of horror and fascination. Without protective gear or environmental controls. Sarah smiled, remembering to keep her teeth hidden after learning it unsettled their visitors. This is actually one of our more controlled environments. Wait until you see what some humans do for fun. The delegation paused before a massive window overlooking Lake Geneva. Outside, children played in the snow, throwing white projectiles at each other and building sculptures from the frozen precipitation. The Zrillion's bioluminescent patches flickered rapidly, their equivalent of gasping. Those are juveniles, Chief Researcher Ixal noted, their voice barely a whisper, playing in frozen water, in temperature conditions that would kill most species. Snowball fights are a winter tradition, Sarah explained. Though I prefer skiing myself, strapping boards to your feet and sliding down mountains at high speed. The flickering intensified. One of the junior researchers had to lean against the wall, their environmental suit compensating for their shock. Sarah made a mental note to be more careful about casually mentioning extreme sports. Commander, Ixal began carefully. Our preliminary studies suggest your species originated in a region your people call Africa. Yet you've spread to environments ranging from Arctic tundra to scorching deserts. How is this possible? Sarah led them to the facility's Cultural Exchange Center, where holographic displays showed human activities across Earth's various biomes. We adapt. We innovate. When we can't survive somewhere naturally, we create tools and technologies that let us thrive there anyway. The displays showed humans deep-sea diving, scaling mountains, exploring caves, and even living in space stations. Each image caused new ripples of astonishment through the Zrillion's bioluminescent patterns. Look at this, Naira said, indicating a display of Antarctic researchers. They're living in temperatures that would freeze our environmental suits' power cells. And they're smiling. The human drive to explore is remarkable, Ixal observed. You don't just survive in hostile conditions, you actively seek them out. Why? Sarah considered the question as they watched footage of a desert expedition. Because it's there, she finally answered. Because every challenge we overcome teaches us something new about ourselves and our universe. A low rumble shook the building. The Zrillions immediately huddled together, their lights pulsing in alarm patterns. Sarah checked her wrist display casually. Just a small earthquake, she assured them. Maybe 3.5 on the Richter scale. The building's designed to handle much stronger ones. You built this structure knowing the planet itself might try to shake it apart. Naira asked, their translator struggling to convey their incredulity. Of course. We build for the conditions we expect to face. Same reason our coastal cities have tsunami barriers, and our space stations have meteor shields. The conversation was interrupted by an alert on Sarah's display. She read it quickly, her expression brightening. Perfect timing. Would you like to see something really interesting? We have a team testing new deep-sea exploration equipment in the Mediterranean. The Zrillions' collective response was a mixture of horror and fascination. Ixal, however, stepped forward. You mean to tell us humans willingly descend into pressurized water environments? Down to about 11 kilometers in our deepest submarines, Sarah confirmed, though free divers can reach impressive depths without any equipment at all. The junior researcher who had nearly fainted earlier actually did lose consciousness this time. As their colleagues attended to them, Ixal turned all four eyes to Sarah. "Commander Chen," they said, their voice carrying a new tone of respect, "I begin to understand why your species has advanced so quickly. Every day of your existence is a challenge that would break most races, yet you treat it as normal, even seeking out greater challenges for what you call fun." Sarah nodded, leading the conscious members of the delegation toward the facility's underwater observation deck. "That's humanity for you. We're never satisfied with good enough. We always want to go further, climb higher, dive deeper." As they watched human divers testing new equipment in the pressure chamber below, Ixal made rapid notes in their data system. Perhaps, they mused, this is why the galaxy needs your people. You've made the impossible your daily routine. A diver in the chamber waved up at them, the gesture causing another ripple of amazement through the Zrillion lights. Here was a being casually surviving conditions that would crush their environmental suits like eggshells. "Commander," Naira asked, their translator working overtime to convey their complex emotions, "does anything frighten your species?" Sarah's smile returned, wider this time. "Oh, plenty of things. We just don't let that stop us. That's another human tradition, feeling the fear and doing it anyway." As if to emphasize her point, alarms began blaring throughout the facility. Sarah's display lit up with urgent messages, and her expression shifted from casual to focused in an instant. "Speaking of challenges," she said, checking the alerts, "it seems we're about to get a practical demonstration of how humans handle crisis situations. Are you ready to see humanity at its best?" Red emergency lights bathed the UEDF headquarters in an eerie glow as Commander Chen quickly assessed the situation. Her display showed multiple urgent warnings. A major underwater seismic event had triggered a submarine landslide, threatening both the deep-sea testing facility and the Mediterranean coastal regions. "Status report," she commanded, her voice calm despite the chaos unfolding around them. The Zrillion delegation huddled together, their bioluminescent patterns pulsing with anxiety as humans rushed purposefully through the corridors. "Submarine landslide detected off the coast." A response came through her comm system. "Potential tsunami risk. Deep-sea testing facility reporting structural damage. We have personnel trapped in the lower levels." Chief Researcher Ixal's translator crackled with distress. "Surely you'll evacuate immediately. The pressure at those depths." "We never leave our people behind," Sarah interrupted, already moving toward the Crisis Command Center. "You're welcome to observe our response procedures from the safety of your ship, but we've got work to do." To her surprise, Ixal kept pace despite their environmental suits' strain. "We will stay. This is educational." The command center was a hive of controlled activity. Displays showed the underwater situation from multiple angles, while rescue coordinators communicated with teams around the Mediterranean. What impressed the Zrillions most was the complete absence of panic. Every human moved with purpose and precision. "Testing facility reports level 3 breach," an operator announced. "Emergency seals holding at 82% efficiency. 4 crew members trapped in the research bay." Sarah nodded, studying the structural diagrams. "What assets do we have in range?" "Deep rescue vessel Challenger can reach them in 22 minutes. But Mom," the operator hesitated, "pressure readings are off the charts. The rescue sub wasn't designed for these conditions." "Then we adapt," Sarah stated firmly. "Get me Captain Rivera on the Challenger." A holographic display sprang to life, showing a woman in a pressure suit. Behind her, her crew was already preparing rescue equipment. "We see the situation, Commander," Rivera reported. Standard procedures won't cut it, but we've got an idea. Let's hear it, Captain. We can reroute power from our non-essential systems to reinforce the structural integrity field. It'll leave us with minimal life support and no backup systems, but it should let us reach the testing facility. The Zrillian's lights flickered frantically. Nara stepped forward, their translator struggling to convey their alarm. You cannot be serious. Even if you reach them, the strain on your vessel will be enormous, Rivera completed the thought. But so is the strain on the testing facility's emergency seals. Those are our people down there. We're going. Sarah turned to the alien delegation. This is humanity at its core. When the impossible stands between us and saving lives, we rewrite the rules of possible. The next hour was a masterclass in human crisis management. The Challenger's crew modified their vessel's systems on the fly, pushing their technology far beyond its designed limits. Surface teams coordinated tsunami prevention measures, while emergency responders prepared for every contingency. Hixel watched in fascination as humans casually dealt with conditions that their own species considered unsurvivable. The pressure at the rescue depth would have crushed their most advanced vessels instantly, yet these humans spoke of it as merely another problem to solve. Approaching rescue depth, Rivera's voice came through, strained but determined. Hull stress at 95% of modified tolerance. We can see the facility. The command center held its breath. On the displays, the Challenger's exterior cameras showed the damaged testing facility, its emergency lights pulsing weakly in the crushing darkness. Establishing seal with emergency airlock, Rivera reported. Beginning extraction. One by one, the trapped researchers were brought aboard the Challenger. Each successful rescue was met with quiet celebration in the command center, humans allowing themselves brief moments of joy before focusing on the next challenge. All personnel secured, Rivera finally announced. Beginning ascent. Hull integrity at concerning levels, but we'll make it. As the rescue sub began its careful journey to the surface, Ixel turned to Commander Chen. Your people risked everything. The Challenger's crew could have died, yet they didn't hesitate. Sarah smiled. That's the thing about humans, researcher Ixel. We recognize the risks. We feel the fear, but when others need us, we act anyway. And the tsunami threat? Naira asked, noting that humans were still working intently at their stations. Being handled, Sarah replied, bringing up new displays. We've had centuries to develop countermeasures. Underwater resonance arrays are already dispersing the wave energy. Coastal barriers are on standby, but they probably won't be needed. The Zrillian delegation watched in amazement as humans systematically defeated what should have been an unsurvivable cascade of disasters. Their casual competence in handling multiple simultaneous crises was almost as shocking as their willingness to risk their lives for others. Commander Chen, Ixel said as the situation finally stabilized, I believe we've been fundamentally misunderstanding your species. We saw you as beings who survived despite your hostile world. But that's not it at all, is it? Sarah turned to the alien researcher, curiosity in her eyes. Oh, what's your new theory? You are what you are because of your world. Every challenge it presented made you stronger, more resourceful, more determined to overcome the impossible. Ixel's lights pulsed with revelation. You don't just survive here. You were forged here. As if to punctuate their words, the Challenger surfaced in the Mediterranean, its hull bearing new scars, but its precious cargo safe. Another impossible mission, made possible by humanity's refusal to accept defeat. Perhaps, Sarah suggested, watching the rescue crews deploy to assist the Challenger's passengers. That's why we were meant to meet. The galaxy needs people who look at the impossible and see opportunity. People who've learned that can't just means, haven't figured out how yet. 3 months after the deep-sea rescue incident, the Galactic Council's emergency session chamber buzzed with tense activity. Representatives from 200 species gathered to address an unprecedented crisis. The Vorkath swarm had breached the outer defense perimeter of the Andromeda Arm. Commander Chen stood before the assembly, her presence commanding attention despite being one of the few beings in the room without environmental protection. Beside her, Chief Researcher Ixel's bioluminescence pulsed with urgent patterns as they addressed the Council. "The Vorkath have adapted to our conventional defenses," Ixel reported, their translator conveying the gravity of the situation. "Their new bioships can withstand our strongest weapons, and they're evolving faster than we can develop countermeasures." Murmurs of despair rippled through the assembly. The Vorkath, a silicon-based hive consciousness, had emerged from deep space 6 months ago. Traditional combat tactics proved useless against an enemy that treated the vacuum of space as its natural habitat. Sarah stepped forward, her movement drawing all eyes. "You're approaching this wrong," she stated, her voice carrying across the chamber. "You're fighting them in conditions they've mastered. We need to change the battlefield." "Explain," the Council Elder demanded, their crystalline form shimmering with interest. Sarah activated a holographic display, showing the Vorkath fleet's current position. "They're perfectly adapted for space combat, but they have one critical weakness. They've never faced a species forged in conditions like Earth's." She gestured, and the display shifted to show a new class of human vessel. "We've developed ships that can descend into gas giant atmospheres. The pressure and gravity would crush normal vessels, but we're used to working with extreme conditions." The assembly erupted in shocked discussions. Fighting in a gas giant's atmosphere was considered impossible by most species. The pressures involved would destroy any known spacecraft. "You propose to lure the Vorkath into a gas giant?" Naira asked, their lights flickering with realization. "Better," Sarah smiled. "We've already done it. A Vorkath scout fleet followed one of our ships into Jupiter's atmosphere yesterday. None of them survived the descent. Their silicon-based biology couldn't handle the pressure differential." The chamber fell silent. Ixel's lights pulsed with understanding. "You turned your greatest challenge into their greatest weakness." "Exactly," Sarah confirmed. "We've identified 17 gas giants along their invasion route. We can force them to either face us in environments we've mastered or take longer routes that will fragment their swarm." A new hologram appeared, showing human ships conducting maneuvers in conditions that would crush most species' vessels instantly. The Council watched in amazement as Earth's fleet demonstrated capabilities that defied conventional wisdom about what was possible. "But the risk," one representative began. "Is acceptable," Sarah interrupted. "These are conditions we train for. While your species were developing technologies to avoid extreme environments, we were building technologies to master them." The Council Elder's crystalline form resonated with decision. "What do you need from us?" "Support vessels and coordination. We'll handle the heavy lifting in the gas giants, but we need your fleets to manage the space lanes between them. This only works if we force them to choose between our killing grounds and your blockades." The strategic brilliance slowly dawned on the assembly. Humanity wasn't just offering to fight. They were offering to turn the very environments most species feared into strategic assets. "There's more," Sarah continued, bringing up new tactical displays. "We've developed pressure bombs based on our deep-sea exploration technology. When detonated in space, they create localized zones of crushing pressure. The Vorkath's bioships literally implode." Ixel's lights pulsed with excitement. "You've weaponized your world's hostile conditions." "We've weaponized our experience," Sarah corrected. "Every challenge Earth threw at us taught us something. Now we're teaching the Vorkath why you don't pick a fight with Deathworlders." The next several hours were spent planning the defense of the galaxy. Human tactical advisors shared expertise developed through centuries of surviving impossible conditions. What other species saw as unsurvivable hazards, humanity had long since learned to use as tools. As the session concluded, Ixel approached Sarah privately. "When we first discovered Earth, we thought we'd found an anomaly. A species that survived despite their environment. Now I understand we had it backwards." Sarah raised an eyebrow. "Oh, you survived because of your environment. Every challenge it presented made you stronger, more adaptable. You didn't just survive a death world. You learned to turn death world conditions into advantages. That's humanity's greatest strength, Sarah agreed. We don't just endure. We learn, we adapt, we overcome. And now, she looked at the tactical displays showing the Vorkath fleet's position. Now we're going to teach that lesson to an enemy that thought the galaxy would be an easy conquest. The assembly chamber slowly emptied as species prepared for the greatest coordinated military action in galactic history. At its heart would be humanity, the Deathworlders who had learned to turn the impossible into the inevitable. A year after the Vorkath conflict, the observation deck of the newly constructed Galactic Exchange Station offered a breathtaking view of Earth. Commander Sarah Chen, recently promoted to Admiral, stood beside Chief Researcher Ixel, watching ships from dozens of species navigate through space that had once seemed impossibly dangerous. Your design recommendations were invaluable, Ixel noted, their bioluminescence glowing steadily with contentment. No other species would have thought to build a space station capable of withstanding meteor impacts. We just applied the same principles we use in our earthquake-resistant buildings, Sarah replied, watching as a massive freighter navigated past the station's reinforced shields. Plan for the worst, then build something tough enough to handle worse than that. The station represented a new era of cooperation between humanity and the galactic community. Its sections varied from high-gravity zones, where humans could work comfortably, to low-pressure areas suited for more fragile species. It was a testament to how much had changed since first contact. The medical exchange program has yielded extraordinary results, Ixel continued, bringing up a holographic report. Your species' cellular repair mechanisms are revolutionizing trauma treatment across the galaxy, and your scientists' insights into pressure-resistant materials have transformed spacecraft design. Sarah nodded, remembering how far they'd come. The victory over the Vorkath had shown the galaxy that humanity's disadvantages were actually incredible strengths. Now, species that had once viewed Earth as a nightmare world were learning to appreciate the gifts that such a harsh cradle could bestow. The adaptation training programs are particularly successful, Ixel added, their lights pulsing with pride. My own people have begun exploring higher gravity environments using techniques developed by your deep-sea researchers. Small steps, but steps that would have seemed impossible a year ago. Sarah completed the thought. Just as you've helped us refine our technologies and expand our understanding of the universe. The station's alert system chimed softly, announcing the arrival of a new vessel. Through the observation window, they watched as a ship of unique design approached, the first joint venture between human and alien engineers. Its hull incorporated both the pressure resistance of human vessels and the crystalline energy distribution systems of the Zrillians. We're calling it the Bridge class, Sarah explained, though Ixel had seen the designs. Tough enough to handle extreme conditions, but efficient enough to make long-range exploration practical. The best of both our approaches. A fitting symbol, Ixel observed. When we first discovered Earth, we thought we'd found beings who had somehow survived despite impossible odds. Now we understand that those very challenges are what made you perfect partners for a dangerous universe. Below them, Earth continued its eternal dance around the sun, its harsh beauty now appreciated rather than feared. Storms that would devastate other worlds rolled across its surface, while tectonic forces reshaped continents, all part of the crucible that had forged humanity. The galaxy was stagnating, Ixel continued, their lights pulsing thoughtfully. We'd grown too comfortable, too cautious. Your species reminded us that challenges breed innovation, that difficulties can become advantages if viewed correctly. Sarah smiled, watching as a group of alien scientists boarded a shuttle bound for Earth's new underwater research facility. And you've taught us that strength isn't just about surviving. It's about using what we've learned to help others grow stronger too. The station's internal gravity shifted slightly as it adjusted for a passing solar wind, a feature that would have been impossible before human engineers shared their expertise in designing for dynamic conditions. Throughout the structure, beings from across the galaxy worked together, each bringing their unique perspectives and abilities to their shared challenges. The Vorkath thought they could conquer the galaxy because they were perfectly adapted to space, Sarah mused. They never understood that true strength comes from learning to adapt to any condition, not just mastering one. A lesson humanity learned from your world, Ixal agreed. Each earthquake, each storm, each pressure change forced you to innovate, to overcome. You turned survival into an art form, and now you're teaching that art to the galaxy. An alert on Sarah's display reminded her of an upcoming meeting. Representatives from 30 species gathering to discuss the expansion of the Joint Exploration Program. Humanity's experience with extreme environments had opened up vast regions of space previously considered too dangerous to explore. We should head to the conference room, she said, but paused for one more look at Earth. You know, when I was a child, I used to wonder why our world had to be so challenging. Now I understand. We needed every test, every trial, every impossible situation it threw at us. Ixal's lights pulsed in agreement. It prepared you for a universe that needed exactly what you could offer. Beings who look at the impossible and see opportunity, who face the unsurvivable and find a way to thrive. As they made their way to the conference room, screens showed scenes from across the galaxy. Human pressure resistance techniques protecting alien colonies from stellar phenomena. Alien energy distribution systems, making human deep space exploration more efficient, and countless other examples of cooperation yielding innovations neither species could have achieved alone. The Deathworld that had forged humanity had given the galaxy exactly what it needed: partners who could turn adversity into advantage, who could teach others to face their fears and overcome them. And in return, humanity had gained something just as valuable: the knowledge that their greatest challenges had prepared them to be teachers, protectors, and pioneers in a universe that desperately needed all three. Earth spun below, beautiful and terrible, nurturing and harsh, no longer a death world, but a crucible of life that had prepared its children for the stars themselves.